From the very moment you wake up, fear kicks in, doesn't it? Into your mind, into your thoughts, and then seeps into your body, and you get those strange, horrible, uncomfortable emotions inside you. We spend the rest of the day in survival mode, don't we? Just getting through it, not experiencing it fully, not enjoying it. This is what trauma does to us. But it's not your fault. You're the victim here. You're the victim of negligence from others, from abuse from others, that has left you with this daily fear cycle, this loop that just robs you. But what if we could intercept this fear before it really takes hold and ruins our day? Well, guess what? We can. And today I'm going to show you exactly how. I'm Rohan from Trauma Lab, and I get it. I've been through it. I'm still working through it. Today I'm going to talk about the one thing that has really saved my life, and that's meditation. Lots of people talk about it. Some people do it, and like me, they get huge benefits. Other people try it, they can't keep up with it, they feel bad for not being able to do it, and it becomes more of another stick to beat yourself with, doesn't it? And I understand that, because I don't need much of an excuse for a stick to beat myself up about pretty much anything. But I'm going to explain how a meditation practice is not just hugely beneficial and why, because we need to understand why, don't we? We need to understand what it's doing to our bodies and minds and how that's helping. More importantly, I'm going to explain how to keep it up, how to make it sustainable, how you can make this a practice that really shifts your life in the way that mine has. Let's start with the brain. Now, your brain has had to understandably learn coping mechanisms to keep you safe, because when you were growing up or other times when you experienced trauma, it wasn't safe. It wasn't a safe environment. Now, even if it's safe now, your brain hasn't forgotten those coping mechanisms. One of those coping mechanisms that makes a lot of sense when you think about it is that the brain is going to flood you with fear hormones as soon as you wake up. It wants you to be on guard. It wants you to be alert for any dangers. And it wants to prioritize that above anything else, including your happiness, your contentment, and your experience of life. Again, this is not your fault, and it's not your brain's fault. You are both victims of the trauma that was inflicted on you. So it's time to rehab that out. Before I get really into it, I just want to say one thing that I defaulted to and that many of us default to. And it's actually something you need to stop, because this habit will just reaffirm the cortisol, the adrenaline spike within you. And that is drinking coffee first thing. If you drink coffee, you are telling the body that it was right. You're telling the mind that it's correct, that we do need to be hypervigilant. And that hypervigilance will stay with you all day as you find yourself needing more and more coffee. So one thing not to do is to carry on with your caffeine habit. Yes, by all means, dial it down. I'm not saying with any of this, go cold turkey, because that's not going to help you either. That's going to create a shock. Try to replace it with lower forms of caffeine, like green tea or normal tea, builder's tea. And this rings true for a lot of the things I talk about, and a lot of the things that I've found have helped me. Don't act them out. You know you're injured. You know you've got symptoms of that injury. Because when we act it out and when we try to fix it with external stuff like, things, careers, relationships, they often compound it, don't they? Because when we're in that anxiety loop, we miss the really important things in the day, which makes us feel more anxious. And actually we go down pathways that aren't beneficial and aren't serving us. Instead, we need to acknowledge what's going on inside us neurologically in our brain and start to rehab that injury, which we're going to do now with meditation. So I'll start with the why. Why is meditation so talked about? Why is it a kind of go-to thing for anxiety and CPTSD? Well, it does two really interesting things. The first thing is, when you're in that anxiety loop, when you've had that rush of adrenaline and cortisol in the morning and it's making you feel edgy, the last thing you want to do is slow down. You actually do the opposite. You actually rush around, and that helps us to miss lots of important things and nurturing things in our day, which then compounds the issue. By stopping to meditate, you're actually doing the opposite of what the cortisol is designed to do, which is to keep you on guard and moving. stop you rushing, start calming down, affirming to the brain, and then reaffirming that you're actually safe. And there's nothing more in terms of rehabilitation for a traumatized brain than showing it that actually we're safe. Because we can say as many affirmations as we want, but until we really believe it, we feel it within our bodies and then our minds, is it going to start knowing actually the world is a safe place now. And by reaffirming that daily, slowly, and it's key to say that this isn't a magic bullet, none of this is, we are tending to a real injury. But over time, like any rehabilitation program, this will start to make huge differences for you. And the second thing that meditation really achieves, if it's practiced regularly, is it allows you distance between your true, yourself, and the trauma response. So the trauma response typically acts in two ways. We've already spoken about one. The one we've spoken about, it will flood you with emotions, with adrenaline. All they are is chemicals in the bloodstream. But your injured brain uses them to keep you alert in fight or flight or freeze or fawn mode. The other projection that we all get, traumatized or not, but particularly if you have experienced trauma on a regular basis, is that our thoughts are very intrusive. And there's the term, and a friend reminded me of this the other day, there's the term the illusion of thought, that you can live your entire life behind a veil of thought. And the moment you accept and realize and really embed in you that you are not your thoughts, and that your thoughts are separate to you and they have no bearing on your life, especially for someone who has anxiety or trauma, this is a major breakthrough, and meditation helps us to do that. I use 2 prompts in my meditation, which I found for me as a trauma victim, as we all are victims, I found these prompts to be really useful. The first is that, yes, I am not my thoughts. And to really reaffirm that, I keep coming back to this analogy that I heard, which is I'm on a riverbank and there is debris, there's branches, there's leaves floating down the river, and they're my thoughts, and I do not engage in them. I watch them, it's very relaxing actually. They just pass by, but I do not engage in them. And the second prompt that I use in my meditations is when I feel the anxiety, the visceral physical manifestation of my brain trying to keep me safe through adrenaline, cortisol, when I feel that, instead of pushing it away, which I've tried for many years, and here I can confirm it's impossible to push them away, instead of trying to push them away, I do the opposite. I allow them in. And this is incredible, because at first you're thinking, well, why am I letting this in? This is an uncomfortable feeling. This is this horrible thing that's been following me around for most of my life. Why am I going to embrace it? Well, the minute you do is the minute it starts to take care of itself. And so I embrace that uncomfort within me, and I allow it to be there, much like the logs and the leaves passing me by on the riverbank. I allow it to be there. But more than those thoughts, instead of just letting them pass, I go into that emotion. I go into that feeling of fear. I go into that uncomfortable sensation in my body. And you know, I welcome them almost like valued sort of messengers, because they're telling me, yes, you really do need to meditate. And of course, you can apply the technique to the emotions that pop up all day, don't they? I mean, it's like whack-a-mole sometimes. But you can apply this idea of taking a step back and going into that emotion. I get them all really around my solar plexus. I call it the spider because I feel like it sits on me, like a spider in the center of a web. But when the spider comes, when your emotion, wherever you get it, comes, by stopping and going into it, disengaging with thoughts, being on that riverbank, you can apply that anytime. It doesn't have to be in your morning practice or in the evening, whichever works best for you. You can apply that technique anytime, and it is a game changer. Now, the beauty of meditation is it's free, obviously. You don't need any gizmos, gadgets really, or prompts to do it. You can do it on your own, sitting there with a timer if you wish, or without. It is useful when you're a beginner, and I think by one regard or another, we're all beginners in meditation. I think that's the whole point. It can be useful in the early days to have some support. I would recommend Insight Timer, which is free again, and really just looking at the beginners courses, or there's ones on anxiety, or really you can go in the search and look for specific things. I would recommend, for me this has been really helpful, is ones that really focus on letting go of thoughts. Vipassana is a useful Buddhist tradition in meditation, and mindfulness, Samantha mindfulness, again useful things, all based around letting thoughts go, knowing who we really are, knowing that we're not our thoughts and we don't need to live behind the illusion of thought. And just to finish by saying, this is not going to be easy. You know, how many people do you know that have started with meditation and not carried on? How many people roll their eyes now when you hear the word meditation, this ubiquitous thing? You almost feel like it's a club that's going on over there that you're on the outside of. The key to a regular practice is just making it easy. So as I said, you don't need stuff. If you want a guide, you can use Insight Timer. If not, just sit down. You don't need a mat, you don't need a block. Just do it. You don't need to sit in a special posture, which I've spent a long time realizing. But you just need to make it easy for yourself. And you know what? 2 minutes, 3 minutes is great. If you start a 10-minute meditation and you finish after 2, that's fine. Remember, every time you do a second of meditation, that is 1 second more that you've rehabbed your injury, that you've helped your brain to learn that you're actually safe and you're not in that traumatizing environment that was not your fault. You are helping and loving and assisting your brain and body to come back to a safe place, to know it's in a safe place. And that is really all there is to the rehabilitation, the healing. It's as simple as that. It's no more important than that. It's no more significant than that. Your brain has been exposed to danger. It now thinks it's always in danger. You're showing it that it's not. Now, I have created some other videos which have other techniques that really gel nicely with meditation, and if you want to check them out, you can. I'll put a link to it. But I just want to finish by saying, as ever, I am here every step of the way with you in your recovery from trauma.